They say a woman never forgets the moment she becomes a mother, but they rarely mention that her heart may also be torn apart by cruel betrayal on that very day. Angela Morales gave birth to twins in tears, while her husband turned his back and called her ugly, useless. 6 years later, she returned strong, proud, and loved by a billionaire with sincerity. This is not only a journey of love, but also a story of justice, of rising from the ruins to prove that a person's worth never lies in the contempt of others. Angela Morales never imagined the most important day would be a brutal test of faith and love. Inside the delivery room of a community hospital in Seattle, the harsh white glare of fluorescent lights fell across her sweat-drenched face. The monitor beat steadily, 2 heart rhythms echoing like a relentless call. She had endured 18 hours of contractions, and with each passing minute, the empty chair beside her bed mocked her. There was only a cold, aching void where there should have been a hand gripping hers, a voice offering comfort. Angela bit down hard on her lip, clutching the metal rails of the bed. The white gold wedding band, the symbol of eternal promise, dug into her skin, leaving a raw, burning mark. Each contraction twisted her face with pain, but the torment inside her heart was far sharper. Her husband, Bradley Carter, had vanished since morning, using the excuse of an important meeting with real estate clients. When her water broke, Angela had called him in trembling desperation, hoping he would put everything aside and come to her side. But his voice over the phone was icy. "I'm in the middle of a big deal. Not everything revolves around you, Angela. Wait." Then the line went dead. The next wave of pain tore through her, and Angela screamed, tears streaming down her face. Nurse Helen Parker, the night shift nurse with neatly tied silver hair, rushed over and gripped her hand. "Breathe deep. Steady now, Angela. You're not alone. We're all here." Her voice was gentle, but her eyes shone with a pity Angela didn't want to see. Because hidden in that look, "Where's your husband? Why did he leave you like this?" Angela turned away, her eyes locking on the wall clock. The second hand ticked on, minute by minute, hour by hour. She wondered where Bradley was, in a bar, another woman's bed, or maybe closing a deal. Whatever the truth, his absence right now spoke louder than words. Memories from the past months flooded back. Nights when Bradley stumbled home late, reeking of alcohol and cheap perfume. The frown he wore whenever she mentioned setting up a room for the twins. His bitter complaint, "2 kids will ruin my career. Don't you get that?" Angela had pushed those fears aside, believing things would change once the babies arrived. He would see them, soften, and become the father she trusted he could be. But that belief melted away like thin ice under a ruthless flame. Dr. Olivia Bennett, the obstetrician, strode in with firm authority. "Angela, it's time. I can see the first baby's head. Push with everything you've got." Angela nodded, gasping for breath. The pain surged like a tidal wave, sweeping her thoughts away. She screamed, forcing every last ounce of strength into the effort. 26 minutes later, a cry ripped through the room, piercing the silence. The entire space seemed to glow. Nurse Helen placed a tiny, wrinkled baby girl against Angela's chest. Angela trembled as she touched the soft cheeks, the little fingers grasping her skin in a desperate search for life. "Hello, Sofia," Angela whispered, tears spilling freely. "Mommy's here. Mommy will never leave you." 17 minutes later, Elena's first cry was softer yet just as strong. Angela cradled both of them in her arms, her heart overflowing with fierce love. In that moment, all her pain seemed to dissolve. She was no longer the wife abandoned by her husband, but a mother who had brought 2 precious lives into the world. Yet when her eyes shifted to the door, her heart clenched. The door stayed closed. No one came in. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that the door finally swung open. Angela's head snapped up, her heart pounding with fragile hope. But the sight that met her eyes was a cruel blow. Bradley Carter, shirt wrinkled, tie hanging loose, reeking of alcohol. He stood there bleary-eyed, making no move toward the bed. "Done already?" His voice was hoarse, flat, indifferent. Angela choked out, "Bradley, come here, look at them. Sofia and Elena. We chose their names together." His eyes flicked at the 2 bassinets, then back at her. A crooked smile twisted his lips, stripped of affection. "Look at you," he snorted. "Pathetic. They say women glow when they're pregnant. But you, fat, pale, hair a mess. I don't even recognize the woman I married." The words stabbed straight into Angela's heart. She shook, holding her babies tighter. You just said what? I gave you 2 children." Bradley burst into mocking laughter. "Don't flatter yourself. You think any man would want a woman like you? You're ugly, ruined, useless." Angela felt her entire world collapse. But before she could respond, Bradley reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope, and tossed it onto the bed. Cold papers spilled out. "Divorce papers," he said casually, as though discussing a business deal. "My lawyer took care of everything. I can even deny child support. Who knows if these kids are even mine?" Angela froze. "You're leaving me today? The day our children are born? I'm 28. I've got my whole life ahead. I'm not wasting it on dirty diapers, midnight crying, and your puffy face." He turned to go, but not before delivering one last cruel cut. "I once thought you were beautiful. Now I can't even understand why I ever wanted you. No one will ever love you again, Angela. You're trash." The door shut, leaving behind the stench of liquor. In the cold, sterile room, Angela broke down, her sobs mixing with the cries of her innocent children. She clutched them close, as if to stitch her shattered heart to their tiny, beating ones. And in the darkness, a spark of will ignited. Bradley could abandon her, could call her useless. But Sofia and Elena needed their mother. And Angela Morales would never let them feel the abandonment she had just tasted. She kissed their foreheads, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I'll raise you strong. I'll prove him wrong. One day, we won't cry anymore." That night, the hospital room became a lonely world of Angela's ragged breaths and the weak cries of her newborns. Outside, the hall echoed with nurses' footsteps, rattling carts, and broken announcements. But inside this small space, Angela felt like she had been thrown out of orbit from the life she once knew. She remembered the early days with Bradley. He had been a young broker with a dazzling smile and eyes that seemed to promise the world. Angela had just graduated in interior design, full of dreams. They met at a real estate exhibition, where Bradley was drawn to her passion and keen sense of space. Within a year, they were married in a small suburban church, surrounded by family and friends. Back then, Angela had believed she had found her safe harbor. But today, that promise lay in ruins. Angela looked at her hand, where the wedding band still clung tight. She wanted to tear it off, throw it away, but her swollen fingers, stiff from hours of labor, held it captive. It stayed there, a mocking relic of betrayal. Nurse Helen returned, gently laying a hand on her shoulder. "Angela, you need to rest. Both babies are healthy. That's what matters most." Angela forced a twisted smile. "Matters to who? To me, or to the man who just walked out?" Helen didn't answer right away. Her eyes dimmed with sorrow, as if she had witnessed too many tragedies like this in her career. "To your children. They need you strong. And you are the most important thing in their world." Those words struck deep, carving into Angela's soul. Helen was right. Sofia and Elena, fragile little beings, depended entirely on her. If she fell, who would stand in her place? Angela willed herself to lie back, letting her exhausted body rest. Yet her gaze kept drifting toward the bassinets. Tiny hands waved in the air, pink lips pursed, then parted, breaths fluttering. They were so delicate, as though even a breeze might carry them away. "My darlings," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I promise I won't let anyone hurt you, no matter what it takes." A tear slipped down, falling onto Elena's little hand. The baby frowned, then curled her fist as if trying to hold onto her mother's tear. Angela's heart ached, but a strange strength stirred in that ache. By morning, Bradley had not returned. No call, no message. Instead, his lawyer's email arrived, stating the divorce would proceed swiftly, and he had no intention of contesting custody. To him, the baby girls didn't exist. Angela's hands trembled as she read the cold words on her phone. She felt rage, humiliation, but most of all, the sting of being dismissed. Did he really think she couldn't live without him? Nurse Helen came in with a cup of warm milk. Don't let his words crush you. I've seen plenty of women raise children alone. Hard, yes, but not impossible. Angela looked up into her eyes. But I have nothing. Freelance work is unstable. My savings will barely last a few months. What am I supposed to do? Helen squeezed her shoulder, firm and reassuring. One day at a time. Don't look too far ahead. Today, eat, rest, feed your babies. Tomorrow will come when it comes. Angela nodded, realizing the truth in that simple wisdom. Maybe her new life wouldn't have grand plans anymore. There are no dreams of a spacious house with a garden or luxurious vacations, Bradley once painted. Instead, it would be small steps, paying bills and preparing meals. But at least, it would be a life she owned, not one trampled under someone else's contempt. On discharge day, Angela carried both babies in trembling arms. No flowers from her husband, no cheerful congratulations. Only Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor, came to help pack her things. She placed a gentle hand on Angela's shoulder, her eyes filled with sympathy. Child, don't be ashamed. You're not the first woman abandoned by a man, and you won't be the last. But you have two little angels who'll help you through everything. Angela pressed her lips tight, holding Sofia and Elena closer. Inside, she felt both humiliated and strangely proud. Because Mrs. Thompson was right, she had two angels, and their love would be the shield against every insult Bradley had thrown. On returning to her shabby apartment in the working-class district, Angela gazed out the taxi window. Seattle roared on, cars rushing, neon lights shimmering in rain puddles. People hurried past, none noticing the weary woman clutching two newborns with hollow eyes. Yet deep down, Angela knew she was stepping into a new journey. A journey that would not be easy, but at least it was hers to walk. No illusions, no trust in a man to hold her up, only the raw truth. She had to be strong, for Sofia and Elena. Angela drew in a long breath, pressing her cheek to the sweet milk-scented hair of her babies. Bradley abandoned us, but Mommy never will. You are my whole world, and I'll fight for you to my last breath. Inside her, the wound still bled, but on that bleeding ground, a new resolve was taking root. A resolve that would guide her through the years ahead, years of trials, tears, and an unshakable love. The third-floor apartment in the old Rainier Street complex was not the place anyone dreamed of calling home. Stained walls, creaking wooden floors, a sputtering heater that never seemed warm enough in winter. Yet for Angela Morales, it was the first fortress she shared with her newborn twins. In those first days, Angela barely slept. Sofia and Elena cried in turns, needing milk, needing diapers. The nights stretched endlessly, the dim glow of a table lamp the only light. While the other apartments were silent, Angela's small room became a whole world of wailing, soft lullabies, and the weary sighs of a single mother. She was still haunted by the image of Bradley slamming the delivery room door, leaving her behind with venomous words. Every time she remembered, her heart tightened. But every time Sofia stirred in her arms, or Elena's cloudy eyes blinked up at her, a surge of strength rose within. These babies knew nothing of cruelty, they only knew the safety of their mother's arms, the place where they belonged. Some mornings, when sunlight barely slipped past the dusty window, Angela stood watching the two bassinets side by side. Sofia slept soundly, her tiny hand loosely curled. Elena whimpered, lips twitching as if in a dream. Angela whispered, "My loves, we begin again here. I can't promise you riches, but I promise I'll never abandon you like he abandoned us." The words carved themselves into her heart like a vow. Every day, as she nursed them, changed diapers, or rocked them to sleep, she repeated it, her constant reminder that she would never turn back. Days slipped by. Angela was learning how to be a mother while struggling with brutal reality. Savings dwindled. Bills piled up. Bradley disappeared as if he had never existed, except for those cold divorce papers. No calls, no checks, no words. At times, exhaustion drove her to the edge. Once, after 3 sleepless nights, Sofia screaming, Elena spitting up milk, Angela collapsed onto the floor, head in her hands, vision blurred by tears. The cries pounded in her ears like torture. In that moment, she understood why some mothers were driven to despair. But instinct pulled her up. She gathered both babies in her arms and hummed the lullaby her mother once sang. Her trembling voice cracked, but Sofia calmed first. Then Elena drifted off too. Angela let out a shaky breath, her shirt soaked in tears. She kissed their foreheads and whispered, "Mommy's still here. We'll survive. I swear it." Inside that cramped apartment, Angela reshaped her life. The old dining table became a changing station. A living room corner turned into space for the bassinets. The tiny kitchen was filled with formula cans, wipes, and bottles. Everything revolved around two tiny centers of gravity, Sofia and Elena. But it wasn't only exhaustion. There were tender moments Angela would never forget. The first time Sofia smiled in her sleep. The way Elena gripped her finger so tight it hurt, making her laugh through tears. Small, fleeting sparks, but precious, like rays slipping through a crack in the wall, lighting her dark room. Angela knew the road ahead would be steep, but she also knew her heart had found its reason to keep going. Not to prove something to Bradley or defy society's scorn, but for these two fragile souls. While the twins slept one afternoon, Angela sat with an old notebook. Her handwriting wavered with fatigue, but each line burned with resolve. "I will raise my children with love and the strength of my labor. I will not let the past decide the future. I will teach them that a person's worth does not live in the cruel words of others." She closed the notebook, leaving it on the table. It was a covenant with herself, a pledge to guide her no matter what struggles awaited. Angela didn't know it then, but that moment marked a true beginning. She was still the woman abandoned, her heart cracked and raw, but she was also now a mother forged in steel, bearing an eternal vow to protect Sofia and Elena, and to prove to the world that she, Angela Morales, was not disposable. The first weeks back home revealed motherhood not as the sacred love described in books, but as endless responsibility and exhaustion. Days were a blur of diapers, bottles, and damp laundry. Nights offered almost no rest. Yet amid the chaos, when Angela met Sofia's wide gaze or caught Elena's brief giggle, she found another reason to rise again. Sometimes she sat alone by the window, staring at the rain-soaked parking lot below. The streetlight cast her reflection thin and tired, cradling two infants on the dusty glass. In those quiet hours, her mind wandered back. Their simple, happy wedding, dinners filled with laughter in their small apartment, her naive faith that they would build a family together. Now, those memories felt like a dead dream. All that remained was her and two fragile lives. Angela learned to ration her time and strength, as if each minute, each dollar, was precious. She used the baby's naps to wash, clean, or work. Sometimes both cried simultaneously, forcing her to carry them together, Sofia on her shoulder, Elena at her hip. The posture was painful, but it became the familiar sight in the mirror, a thin but steadfast mother, her children clinging to her body as if to life itself. In those moments, Angela realized her vow was not just a burst of emotion in the delivery room. It was a living commitment, demanding sacrifice and endurance. Bradley may have cast her into despair, but the very existence of her children pulled her back, binding her to keep moving. One evening, Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor downstairs, knocked, bringing up a tray of hot lasagna. "You need to eat, to make milk for the little ones," she said, setting it down. "I raised my kids alone, too. I know how hard it island." Angela was stunned. She hadn't expected anyone to notice. The simple kindness cracked her open, and she wept before the older woman. "I'm afraid I'm not strong enough to be a good mother," she confessed. Mrs. Thompson pulled her close, her frail arms steady as iron. "No one is born knowing how to mother, Angela. All you need is love. The rest, you'll learn. Believe me, they won't remember your exhaustion. What they'll remember is that you never left them." Those words poured like warm water into Angela's heart. That night, nursing Sofia, she whispered, "Mommy won't leave you. Even if the world turns its back, I'll still be here." Time passed. 1 month, then 2. Angela began taking small freelance jobs, such as interior sketches and flyer designs for local shops. The pay was little, but it gave her proof she still had worth and was not drowned completely. Each time she finished a design, she looked at the bassinets where Sofia and Elena slept, their cheeks rising with soft breaths. She smiled. "You two are Mommy's drive. I'm not doing this to prove Bradley wrong. I'm doing it to show you we can live a decent life even if no one else believes we can." One morning, after a nearly sleepless night, Angela looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, tangled hair, chapped lips. But for the first time, she didn't feel the shame of Bradley's insults. Instead, she saw a woman fighting, exhausted, worn down but a warrior for two tiny lives. She whispered to herself, "He was wrong. I'm not useless. I'm a mother." And so, the vow from the delivery room was spoken again, not in despair this time, but in strength. Angela had no idea yet that these journal pages, these whispered promises, would become the milestones of her journey. A journey not only to raise Sofia and Elena, but to raise herself from a woman crushed, to a mother unbreakable, to a human being reclaiming her worth, from the tear that fell on her daughter's cheek, from the neighbor's lasagna, from countless nights cradling her babies. Angela Morales carved one truth into eternity. She would never let the cruelty of the past define the future. 5 years had passed since the night Angela Morales carried her newborn daughters out of the hospital, abandoned in the silence of a broken marriage. Time hadn't erased the pain but forged her into someone new. No longer the naive woman who once believed love could conquer all, Angela was now a single mother surviving on discipline, hard work, and love. The shabby apartment on Rainier Street was still their home. The stained walls were covered with paintings Angela had created, part decoration and part reminder that life could still hold beauty in its own way. The tiny kitchen always carried the smell of cheap morning coffee, mixed with chocolate milk for the children. On the dining table, plastic containers of leftovers were stacked neatly, for Angela had learned that waste was a luxury she couldn't afford. She took small interior design projects by day, helping working-class families brighten cramped spaces with cheap paint and repurposed furniture. Once Sofia and Elena were asleep at night, she cleaned offices for a janitorial company. On weekends, she sometimes worked as a server at weddings or galas. Some nights she returned home with hands raw and bleeding from harsh chemicals, but she only looked at her sleeping girls and whispered with a faint smile, "Mommy's fine. As long as you're healthy, nothing else matters." Sofia and Elena, now 5, were the light of Angela's life. Though twins, they couldn't have been more different. Sofia was thoughtful, almost solemn. She could spend hours doodling, then suddenly ask hard questions. "Mommy, why do some kids have dads who take them to school, and we don't?" The words pierced Angela, but she always answered gently, "You have a father who chose to leave, but you have me and I love you twice as much." Elena, in contrast, was pure sunshine. She laughed and talked non-stop, loved to dance, and to sing at the top of her lungs. She wasn't shy about asking boldly, laughing loudly, or smothering her mother affectionately. "Mommy, you're my princess," she often declared, hugging Angela so tightly that the day's exhaustion melted away. They were Angela's reason to go on. No matter how drained she felt, their giggles and their eyes reminded her she couldn't give in. Every month, Angela tracked every penny. Rent, electricity, preschool, milk, and medicine. Sometimes her expenses outweighed her income, and panic constricted her chest. But then she remembered her vow. Giving up was never an option. Mrs. Thompson, now well into her 70s, still helped with the girls during Angela's night shifts. Her hands trembled from arthritis, but her eyes sparkled each time she welcomed Sofia and Elena. "They're such sweet girls," she would say. "Angela, you're doing far better than you think." Angela was deeply grateful. Without Mrs. Thompson, she sometimes wondered how she would have managed. And from her, Angela learned something important. Accepting help wasn't a weakness, as long as she kept fighting with everything she had. One autumn evening, Angela slipped into a borrowed black server's uniform in the back room of the Harborview Hotel. A tray of wine glasses trembled slightly in her tired hands. Beyond the doors lay a glittering charity gala, where wealthy guests sparkled in silk gowns and polished tuxedos. Angela drew a deep breath. Each time she worked these events, she felt both awe and a sharp ache pulled back to her college days, when she dreamed of standing in such halls as a successful designer, not a server. She glided quietly through the crowd, catching snippets of conversation, investments, real estate, European vacations. Each word reminded her of the gulf between her world and theirs. Then a familiar voice rang out behind her. Angela, Angela Morales. She spun, nearly dropping the tray. There stood Rachel Kim, her former college roommate, now a well-known designer. Rachel wore a sea-blue silk dress, her hair sleek and shining, and her eyes a mix of surprise and faint pity. "Oh my God, it is you. It's been forever. What are you doing here, attending the gala?" Angela bit her lip, steadying her voice. "I'm working, serving drinks." Rachel's smile faltered, then quickly returned. "Ah, I see. But back in school, you were so talented. I thought you'd have your own firm by now." "Oh, and your husband? Didn't you marry a realtor? What was his name? Bradley?" The question cut like a blade. Angela forced a thin smile. "We're divorced. It's just me and my daughters now." Rachel gave a tight laugh, her eyes already drifting elsewhere. "Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you must be busy. Let's catch up some other time." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving Angela frozen, her tray heavy in her hands. Shame and bitterness twisted inside her. Encounters like this were why she dreaded running into people from her past. They didn't see her strength, only her failure. Angela swallowed hard, forcing herself back to work. But Rachel's words echoed like a drumbeat, pounding the distance between her dreams and reality. She remembered nights in the dorm, sketching future designs with Rachel, when they had believed that effort alone could make anything possible. But life wasn't just dreams and willpower. It was betrayal. It was overdue bills. It was survival. Angela had accepted that truth, but moments like this tore open the armor she had built around herself. Lost in thought, Angela bumped into a guest, stepping back from a handshake. The tray tilted, and red wine splashed across the man's crisp white shirt in slow motion. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Angela gasped, fumbling with a napkin. "I didn't mean—" "It's fine," a deep, steady voice replied. "It's only a shirt." Angela looked up, heart stalling. A tall man with kind green eyes was watching her. Despite the spreading stain, he smiled, entirely unbothered. "I should apologize," he said calmly. I stepped back without looking. "Are you all right? You look pale." Flustered, Angela nodded quickly. "I'm fine. But your shirt—" "Shirts can be replaced. People matter more." He smiled, extending his hand. "Christopher Hayes." Angela froze. The name was unmistakable. Head of Hayes Technologies, one of Seattle's most celebrated philanthropists, often splashed across headlines. But face to face, he was nothing like the cold, influential figure she had imagined. His eyes were warm, disarmingly so. "Angela Morales," she whispered. "Angela Morales," he repeated, as though committing it to memory. "A beautiful name. Tell you what, if you're free tomorrow, let me buy you a coffee. That way I can wear a clean shirt and not interrupt your work." Angela opened her mouth to refuse. The thought was absurd. A man like Christopher Hayes inviting a single mother, a server, for coffee. But his sincerity stopped her words. I'm not sure." "That's fine," Christopher interrupted gently. "If you change your mind, I'll be at Hudson's Cafe on 5th Street, 2 p.m. Just coffee, nothing more." He was gone before Angela could respond, leaving her in the glittering ballroom, her heart pounding. Back in her apartment, she couldn't shake the encounter that night. Mrs. Thompson had tucked Sofia and Elena in, leaving a note. The girls ate well and were asleep by 9. "You should rest too." Angela slipped off her uniform and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Hollow cheeks, dark circles, hair tied carelessly back. She gave a bitter laugh. "What am I thinking? A man like him, someone like me." Yet when she peeked into the girls' room, Elena stirred in her sleep, mumbling, "Mommy," before drifting back. Angela stroked her daughter's hair, and a thought flickered. What if someone truly saw me? Not with pity, but with respect. The next morning, Angela dropped the twins off at preschool and returned home to work on a client's design. She tried to focus, but the invitation pulsed in her mind. Hudson's Cafe, 2 p.m. At 1:45, she still sat frozen on her chair, torn between fear of being hurt again and the quiet longing to be seen as more than survival. At 1:55, she finally rose, slipping into her neatest old blue dress, and left. On the way, her heart hammered. Perhaps he wouldn't remember. Maybe it was only politeness. But at least she had found the courage to show up. When she stepped inside Hudson's Cafe, she saw Christopher Hayes sitting at the corner table, a coffee cup before him, his gaze fixed on the door as though waiting. And when he saw her, he smiled, the kind of smile that made Angela realize that sometimes a single look could make the impossible seem within reach. Hudson's Cafe on 5th Street blended the city's modern rhythm with a lingering warmth. Exposed brick walls, golden pendant lights, and the rich scent of roasted coffee filled the air. The varnished wooden tables gleamed, the glassware sparkled. Office workers stopped in for quick meetings, young couples whispered over dates, and business people lingered for hours behind silver laptops. Angela hesitated at the doorway, clutching her bag strap, forcing herself to breathe deeply to calm her racing heart. In her head, Bradley's mocking voice returned. "You think anyone would want you after you gave birth? You're nothing but trash." The words repeated like an engraving burned into memory. She nearly turned away until her eyes met Christopher Hayes's. He sat in the corner, dressed simply in a white shirt, a leather-bound book in hand. When he saw her, he closed the book and smiled, not with surprise, but as though he had been sure she would come. "Angela," he said, his deep voice steady, warm, carrying easily through the low murmur of the cafe. "I'm glad you came." Angela's hands trembled as she walked toward him. I almost didn't. I thought maybe you only invited me out of politeness." Christopher stood and pulled out a chair for her. "I don't waste courtesy on things I don't mean. I wanted to see you." Her face flushed as she sat down, eyes dropping. A waiter approached, and Christopher asked, "What would you like? Coffee, tea, or maybe hot chocolate?" Angela looked up, startled. "Why hot chocolate? You seem like someone who treasures small, sweet things." Coffee drinkers tend to be too pragmatic. Tea drinkers are too particular. But people who choose hot chocolate, he shrugged, smiling. They're the ones who still believe in warmth. Angela laughed, shy but genuine. "Then I'll have hot chocolate." When the drinks arrived, conversation began with small pleasantries. Angela explained her freelance interior design work and how she balanced it with raising her daughters. Christopher listened closely, nodding when she spoke of hardships, never cutting in with pity. Then, as though pushed by something inside, Angela blurted out, "You know, I once dreamed of becoming a great designer, but then," she stared down at her cup, "everything changed. I had to raise my girls alone. Dreams, they've been put away." Christopher was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was 12, I lost both my parents in a car accident. I thought my life was put away too, nothing left to hope for. I lived with my uncle, a construction worker. He dragged me to the site, made me learn to hammer, saw, and lay bricks. I hated it. But over time, I realized that building a wall, a house, gave me a reason to exist. Later, I swapped the hammer for a computer. But that feeling stayed. I wanted to create something meaningful." Angela stared at him, breath caught. "That's why you built your company?" He nodded. "The money came later. What I really wanted was to know I wasn't living in vain. And when I hear you talk about turning cold houses into warm homes, I know you're doing the same. You're not put away, Angela. You're living with more meaning than many rich people I've met." Her eyes burned. How long had it been since anyone looked at her that way? Not with pity, not with judgment, but with respect. They talked for hours about hobbies, memories, work, and secret dreams. Angela spoke of Sofia's love of drawing and Elena's joy in dancing. Christopher spoke of nights spent in a tiny construction site room, rain drumming on tin roofing. They both laughed when they discovered a shared love for old jazz records. When the clock struck 5, Angela jolted up. "I have to go. My girls finish their after-school class at 5:30. I promised them spaghetti tonight." Christopher rose too. "Let me drive you home. My car's outside." She shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. I don't want to owe you." His eyes softened with understanding. "All right, but Angela, I hope this isn't our last meeting." She hesitated, then gave a slight nod, and as she left the cafe, Angela felt something strange. Bradley's voice was silent in her mind for the first time in 5 years. What lingered instead was the echo of a deep laugh and kind green eyes. Seattle was draped in twilight when Angela stepped back into the streets. High-rises shimmered with sunset, sidewalks buzzed with pedestrians, and traffic honked and jostled. She clutched her bag tight against the chill wind, but carried a quiet warmth inside. She told herself it had only been a fleeting meeting. A billionaire like Christopher Hayes had surely met hundreds of people. She was no one special. But reason was one thing, her pounding heart was another, whispering that maybe, just maybe, life had given her a chance to believe again. At home, Angela rushed to the kitchen to prepare spaghetti as promised. Sofia and Elena came running, clutching her legs, chattering about their day. "Mommy, I drew a dolphin." Sofia held out a sheet filled with pencil strokes. "Mommy, I learned a new dance." Elena spun in circles, her uniform skirt flaring as she giggled. Angela laughed, kneeling to hug them both. "I'm so proud of you." As they sat around the small table for dinner, Angela looked at her daughter's glowing faces. Without meaning to, Christopher's image came back, how he had listened when she spoke of design, the warmth in his eyes when he spoke of loss and survival. "Mommy, why are you smiling to yourself?" Elena asked suddenly. Angela startled, shaking her head. "It's nothing, sweetheart. I'm just happy to eat dinner with you." But that night, when the girls were asleep, Angela sat alone on the sofa, staring at the streetlight glow spilling through the window. A quiet question throbbed inside her. Had fate just knocked on her door again? The days that followed proved it hadn't been fleeting. Christopher didn't disappear. He called not with curt formalities, but with long, thoughtful conversations. "How was your day?" he would begin. "Are you exhausted? Are the girls all right? Was your client kind?" To her surprise, Angela found herself opening up. She described Sofia's observant nature and Elena's endless energy. Christopher laughed. "Sounds just like me as a kid. I drove my uncle mad with all my questions." "Once," Angela murmured. "Don't you find this boring?" "I have nothing interesting to say." He paused, then said quietly, "I want to know the small things. That's real life, Angela. And to me, it's more interesting than any million-dollar meeting." One evening, while Angela scrubbed offices, her phone buzzed. Christopher's voice came through, tinged with concern. "You're still working this late?" "I need the extra shift for the girls' tuition," she answered, sounding casual. He sighed audibly. "Angela, you can't keep draining yourself like this. Tomorrow, let me take you to dinner. Nothing fancy, just a little Italian place. You need to rest, at least once." She hesitated. She wasn't used to being cared for. The thought of someone else paying for her meal unsettled her. But his earnest tone left no room for refusal. The next evening, they met at a small restaurant beneath trees. No chandeliers or live music, only warm candlelight and the smell of baked pizza. Angela wore a second-hand green dress, old but neat. Christopher stood the moment she entered, his eyes lighting up. "You look beautiful," he said, sincerely. Her cheeks flushed. "You don't have to say that." "I don't have to," he replied softly, smiling. Over dinner, they spoke of everything: music, books, places they longed to see. Angela laughed more than she had in years, forgetting her endless shifts and fatigue. As they left the restaurant, Christopher tilted his head. "Angela, may I see you again? Not just once in a while, often?" She searched his face, hesitating, but in his eyes she saw a reflection of herself. A man who had endured loss, who was searching for family too. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe we should try." That night, Angela came home late. Mrs. Thompson had already tucked Sofia and Elena into bed. She slipped into their room, sitting by their small beds, brushing back their soft hair as they slept peacefully. Her heart swelled. This may be the beginning of a new chapter. Bradley had once told her no one would ever love her again. But now, Angela began to believe he might have been wrong. And that fragile belief was all she needed to take the next step forward. Hudson's Cafe gradually became a place of familiarity for Angela Morales and Christopher Hayes. No rigid schedules, extravagant bouquets, or expensive dinners. Just late afternoons, when Angela finished work and Mrs. Thompson watched the girls, she would sit at the wooden corner table. Christopher was usually already there, with 2 drinks, a black coffee for himself and a hot chocolate for her. "I knew I guessed right," he would smile, sliding the cup toward her, and so, the conversation stretched on. At first, Angela was cautious, sharing only small things: how Sofia had been praised by her teacher, how Elena sulked because she couldn't wear a princess dress to school. But over time, she revealed the deeper parts, her fears, her scars. "Some nights I just listen to my daughters breathe," Angela said once, staring into her cup. "I'm terrified that I won't have the strength one day. I worry they'll have no one if something happens to me." Christopher was silent, then gently placed his warm hand over hers. "I know that feeling. I thought the same after I lost my parents. But Angela, that fear proves your strength. You wake up every day and keep going for them. That isn't weakness, it's more courage than you realize." Angela's throat tightened. It had been so long since anyone said words like that to her. On another afternoon, Christopher spoke of his orphaned boyhood. "Uncle Marcus had no idea how to comfort a 12-year-old who just lost his parents. He just handed me a hammer and said, 'Work. Building will keep you from overthinking.'" He chuckled softly. At first, I hated him for it. But eventually, I understood. When you drive a nail or raise a wall, you see something real take shape. It gives you a reason to keep going. Angela's chest ached with empathy. "And that's why you became successful, maybe. I just traded the hammer for a computer and the bricks for technology. But at its core, it's the same. Building something to prove I still exist." Angela sighed, half smiling. "And me, I just clean, serve, and draw tiny sketches. I'm not building anything." "Angela," Christopher said firmly, meeting her eyes, his voice deep and steady, "you're building an entire world for your daughters. That's the greatest project I've ever heard of." Her heart trembled. For years, she had only heard insults and contempt. Now, a powerful, wealthy man looked straight into her eyes and said she was worthy. The first time they walked outside together, Angela flushed when Christopher patiently waited as she fussed with her worn-out shoes. "They're so old," she muttered, embarrassed. "Don't laugh." He only smiled gently. "I don't see old shoes. I see a woman still standing after surviving a war." Angela turned away, afraid he'd notice her eyes growing wet. In the days that followed, Christopher appeared more often in her life. Never overwhelming, never imposing, quiet, steady. He called every evening, asking not only about Angela but also about Sofia and Elena. "How were my 2 little princesses today?" he'd ask. Angela felt both joy and fear. Part of her craved his presence. Another part dreaded it, afraid it was all an illusion, afraid one day he'd vanish as Bradley had. Yet a tiny spark of hope glowed inside her each time she met Christopher's unwavering gaze. One night, after sharing her unfinished college dreams, Angela laughed at herself. "It sounds silly, but I once wanted to start my own firm, to design homes worthy of magazines. Now it just seems ridiculous." Christopher shook his head thoughtfully. "It's not silly at all. Dreams don't die just because they've been set aside. They wait for the right time to burn again." Angela fell silent. At that moment, she no longer felt like an exhausted woman chasing overdue bills, but like the ambitious student she once was seen again, as if reborn. One weekend, Christopher invited her to the art museum. She hesitated, thinking she didn't belong in such places anymore. But he smiled. "I want to hear you talk about colors, about how light transforms a room. I want to see the world through your eyes." Angela couldn't remember the last time anyone had truly wanted to listen. With Bradley, whenever she shared a design idea, he would frown. "Does that make money?" But that night, among oil paintings, Angela spoke passionately about how blue could bring calm, how yellow could spark hope. Christopher listened intently, nodding, asking thoughtful questions. His eyes made her feel visible again. After the exhibit, they sat by a lakeside park. The city lights shimmered across the water. Angela pulled her coat tighter, and Christopher draped his scarf around her shoulders. "You don't have to," she murmured. "I want to," he said. They sat quietly for a while, the wind whistling, distant laughter drifting in the air. Then Christopher spoke softly. "Angela, I know you're hesitant, but I promise I'm not him. I won't appear and disappear. I truly want to know you." She turned to him. His words pierced her deepest fear. She didn't answer, only nodded faintly. After that, their meetings flowed more naturally. They strolled through the botanical garden, where Elena had always begged to go. Angela laughed when Christopher bent down to smell each flower like a curious boy. They ate sandwiches on a park bench, sharing cheap lemonade, and Christopher told stories of surviving college weeks on instant noodles, making Angela laugh until her sides hurt. Once, when Angela was too busy to talk, Christopher sent a simple message. "Don't forget to rest. The world won't collapse if you pause a little." These were simple words, but for Angela, they were tenderness she had never been given before. One evening, his call came at 7:30, as Angela had tucked the girls in. "Angela, I want to ask you something. Do you believe the past defines us?" She was startled, silent for a moment. "Maybe it leaves scars, but it doesn't have to decide everything." "I think so too," he said. "My past is full of loss. Yours has betrayal. But here we are, talking together. That means we still have a choice, and I choose to believe in the future." Angela's chest tightened. In the dark apartment, with her daughters breathing softly nearby, she whispered with a faint smile, "Maybe I'm starting to believe in the future, too." The most critical date came when Christopher invited her on a weekend picnic. Angela hesitated, fearing it was too much, fearing she didn't belong in such moments. But his eyes were so earnest that she agreed. That day, they spread a blanket on the grass by the lake. Christopher brought a basket filled with sandwiches, fruit, and lemonade. Angela watched him run around laughing with nearby children, carefree like an ordinary man, not a celebrated billionaire. When she asked, "Aren't you afraid someone will recognize you?" Christopher only shrugged. "They may see a businessman, but I want to be seen as a man enjoying life." Angela looked at him, her chest swelling with a feeling she couldn't name, peaceful, fragile, yet strong. She hadn't laughed so freely in years. That night, back in her apartment, Angela opened her old journal and wrote, "Bradley once said no one would ever love me again. But today, I think he might have been wrong for the first time in years. I don't know how long Christopher will walk beside me, but at least I've seen the light again." She closed the notebook, placed her hand on her chest, and listened to her racing heartbeat. Those first dates weren't just casual meetings. They were new heartbeats reviving a soul that had long seemed lifeless. Angela Morales had never imagined stepping into a luxurious salon in downtown Seattle. For her, hair only needed to be tidy, clothes only needed to be clean enough to get through work, school drop-offs, and another exhausting day. But that morning, when Christopher called and said, "Today I want to take you to buy a few things for yourself," Angela didn't say no. "Christopher, I don't need that," she tried to argue. "Money should go toward what's necessary, tuition, bills, the girls." "Angela," he cut in, firm but gentle, "I'm not buying clothes for me. I want you to see yourself differently. This isn't about me, it's about you. Let me show you." His words echoed as she sat in the passenger seat of his sleek car, her reflection faint in the window, dark circles under her eyes, hastily tied hair. "Do I even deserve to change anymore?" Bella Lux's salon appeared before her like another world. Glass doors, polished marble floors, and women in chic dresses walking out with glossy hair. Angela gripped her bag strap, ready to turn back. "Christopher, I can't go in there. They'll know I don't belong." He turned, patient eyes meeting hers. "Angela, you belong wherever you decide to be. No one gets to tell you otherwise." He opened the door and held out his hand. After a beat of hesitation, Angela placed hers in his, and the warmth steadied her steps. Inside, bright lights reflected everywhere. Staff greeted Christopher with easy familiarity, then turned to Angela with welcoming smiles. "Full service for her today, right?" Angela stammered. I need something simple, nothing fancy." A young stylist with violet-dyed hair smiled kindly. "Don't worry, we won't change who you are. We'll bring out what's already there." For 2 hours, Angela's hair was washed, trimmed, and shaped into soft layers that framed her face, no longer the hurried bun she always wore. A makeup artist brushed warm tones over her skin, brightening her brown eyes, covering years of sleepless shadows. When Angela finally looked in the mirror, she couldn't speak. The woman staring back was still her, but radiant, alive, carrying a quiet confidence she thought she had lost forever. Christopher stood behind her, their eyes meeting in the mirror. "I told you," he said softly. "You've always been beautiful. You just forgot to believe it." Her lips trembled, eyes stinging. "I don't remember the last time I felt like this." After the salon, Christopher took her to a clothing boutique. Angela protested fiercely at first. "No, I don't need this. I have a few things that are good enough." But he only said, "Angela, I want you to walk into a room with your head held high, not hiding behind worn uniforms. This isn't for me, it's for you, and for the 2 daughters who look at you daily to learn how to face the world." His words struck her. She thought of Sofia and Elena, of the way they watched her leave each morning in faded shirts. She wanted them to believe women deserved respect, always. So she stepped into the fitting room and tried on a simple emerald dress with a tailored blazer. When she stepped out, Christopher's face lit up. "Yes," he said quietly, "that's the woman the world deserves to see." Angela lowered her gaze, flustered yet deeply moved. Her heart thudded not with fear, but with hope. She left the boutique with 2 paper bags, feeling oddly weightless. The clothes inside were not just fabric, they were permission. Permission to be seen, to be valued. On the drive back, city lights glowed across Christopher's calm face. "Angela, I know you're uneasy," he said. "But remember, there's nothing wrong with investing in yourself. Sometimes it's the only way to remind yourself you are worthy." Angela traced a finger across the bag's smooth paper. "I'm afraid that if I get used to these things, and one day they're gone, it will hurt more." Christopher smiled faintly. "Clothes, shoes, they can vanish, but the belief you build inside yourself, no one can take that away. That's what matters." That evening, Angela stepped into her apartment wearing the emerald dress. Sofia and Elena looked up from their Lego blocks, gasping, "Mommy, you look so pretty." Elena ran to her, circling her with wide eyes. "You're like a princess in the movies." Sofia was quieter, but her eyes glowed. She walked closer, took her mother's hand, and whispered, "You smile more now. I like it." Angela dropped to her knees, hugging them both tight. She understood in that moment that the change wasn't just for her. It was a message for her daughters. No woman should ever let the past define her worth. In the days that followed, Angela began caring for herself differently. No more faded shirts grabbed in a rush. She chose clothes that fit well, tied her hair neatly but let soft strands fall, and brushed on light lipstick before heading out. Her co-workers at the cleaning company teased, "Angela, you've changed. Something good happening?" Angela only smiled, saying nothing, because she knew it wasn't about a man. Christopher had opened the door. She was the one who had stepped through. One afternoon, while Angela tried on the dress again at home, Mrs. Thompson knocked with a loaf of bread. She paused at the sight of Angela, then smiled warmly. "You know, child, I've seen you gaunt and weary, almost breaking. Today, I see a woman finding herself again, and I'm glad." Angela hugged her, voice trembling. "I'm still afraid of losing everything again." Mrs. Thompson stroked her back gently. "That fear may never vanish, but you're different now. You're no longer just surviving. You're living, moving forward." After Sofia and Elena slept that night, Angela opened her old journal. Her palms left faint smudges on the paper as she wrote, "Today I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. Not perfect, not wealthy, but stronger. I no longer hear that cruel voice calling me useless. I hear my heartbeat telling me, Angela, you are still here, and you are worthy. She closed the notebook with a long exhale. Outside, the city sparkled with light, and Angela didn't feel like an outsider for the first time in years. The morning Christopher Hayes officially met Sofia and Elena was a cool Sunday. Angela had braced herself for days. She knew her daughters were her whole world, and if Christopher couldn't find his place with them, nothing else would matter. The apartment was tidier than usual. Angela laid out a clean tablecloth, flipped pancakes as Sofia liked them, and added strawberry syrup just for Elena. At the knock on the door, both girls ran to answer, but Angela stopped them. Wait, girls. This is Mommy's friend. Be yourselves, but remember your manners. When the door opened, Christopher stood there, holding a small bag. Not roses or expensive gifts inside were 2 sketchbooks with animal covers and a box of colored pencils. Hello, princesses, he said, bowing slightly in playful respect. I brought you something small, so you can draw or write whatever your heart's desire. Sofia took her sketchbook, flipping through the blank pages, eyes sparkling. Elena hugged the pencils to her chest, squealing, I'm going to draw Mommy as a princess. Angela's throat tightened, not out of fear, but from the way her heart swelled. Christopher wasn't trying to buy them. He had chosen something perfect but straightforward for their joy. At breakfast, he was never awkward. He asked Sofia about her drawings, listened intently, then chuckled at Elena's fairy tale reenactments, even adding extra syrup with careful hands so nothing spilled. Angela sat watching, struck by the contrast. Bradley had once snapped because the pancakes weren't crisp enough. Christopher was patient and gentle, as if there was no place he'd rather be at this small table. When Sofia asked seriously, Do you like drawing? Christopher smiled. When I was little, I drew houses. Then I turned them into real ones with wood and bricks. I don't draw anymore, but I still love watching people create. Maybe one day, you'll teach me how to draw a dolphin. Sofia nodded, rare laughter spreading across her thoughtful face. After breakfast, they walked to the park. Elena darted ahead, tugging Christopher by the hand. Sofia walked more slowly, but eventually slipped her small hand into his other one. Angela trailed behind, watching 3 silhouettes, one tall, 2 small, her heart surging with happiness so fragile it ached. From her balcony, Mrs. Thompson spotted them. When Angela glanced back, the older woman smiled and nodded as if to say, You were correct to open your heart. That afternoon, back home, Elena clambered onto Christopher's lap and asked bluntly, Can you be our daddy? Angela froze, cheeks burning. Elena, you can't just ask that. But Christopher didn't falter. He looked the child straight in the eye, voice steady and warm. Daddy is a significant word. It means being there, loving, and protecting. If you want, I'll try to be worthy of that word daily. Elena squealed and hugged him tight. Sofia said nothing, but Angela saw the shimmer in her eyes. That night, after Christopher left, Sofia whispered beside her mother, Mommy, I think he's excellent. He makes you laugh more. Angela hugged her daughter, eyes burning. Maybe, this time, I wasn't wrong. In the following weeks, Christopher's presence became natural in their lives. He never forced his way in, never acted like an outsider trying to claim a role. He slipped in gently, through small acts, attending Sofia and Elena's preschool performance, showing up with dinner, and joking, I made too much, and if you 3 don't help, I'll be eating leftovers for a week. Elena treated him like a playmate, pulling him into dances and making him the prince who rescued princesses. Sofia was more reserved, but often sat near him while sketching. Sometimes she'd ask, which looks better, blue or purple? And Christopher always answered thoughtfully, respecting the gravity of her choice. One rainy afternoon, Angela stumbled upon a scene that made her chest ache. Christopher sat on the floor, still in his work shirt, helping Sofia rebuild the Lego castle Elena had toppled. Not a trace of irritation, only encouragement. We can build it again. This time, even better. Life's like that, sometimes it falls apart, but we can always build it back. Sofia nodded, eyes shining. Angela stood silently at the doorway, tears sliding down her cheeks. She knew his words weren't just for the children. They were for her, too. It wasn't always easy. Once, when Christopher offered to help with school fees, Angela pulled back instinctively. "I can't take this," she said sharply. "I don't want to be a burden or depend on a man again." He was quiet for a long time before answering. "Angela, I don't want to replace your effort. I want to share the load. Family isn't one person carrying everything. It's lifting together." Those words stayed with her, echoing at night. She knew her fear was Bradley's shadow, but Christopher was not Bradley. His patience never wavered. The turning point came on the twins' 6th birthday. Angela had planned only a simple cake and a few balloons. But when she came home that day, she froze. Christopher had secretly decorated the living room with ribbons and star-shaped balloons. On the table sat a large cake topped with twin fairies. "Surprise!" Elena squealed, bouncing. Sofia only stared, wide-eyed. Angela turned to Christopher, her voice breaking. You did all this?" He smiled gently. "Not all by myself. The girls helped pick ribbon colors." Laughter filled the apartment that evening. Elena blew out candles. Sofia carefully sliced the cake for everyone. Angela sat back, tears in her eyes, realizing this felt like family. Later, when the girls were asleep, Angela stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the glittering city lights. Christopher joined her, draping a jacket around her shoulders. "You know," Angela whispered, for the first time calling him you, instead of the formal sir, "I never thought I'd see my girls cared for by a man like this. I had prepared myself that they would grow up with only me." Christopher sat beside her, his voice low and steady. "If you'll let me, I want to be more than that. I don't want to be just a friend or a man passing through. I want to be part of your life. All three of you." Angela turned, vision blurred with tears. No grand promises, no glittering words, only sincerity. And for her, that was enough to open her heart once more. One winter afternoon, Angela Morales was arranging a design plan for a client at her newly rented office when the doorbell rang. She thought it was an appointment, but her smile vanished when she opened the door. Bradley. He stood there, heavier now, hair greasy, his face marked by years of excess. Yet those grey-blue eyes still carried the same sneering arrogance Angela knew too well. "Hello, Angela," he said, smirking. "Didn't expect you actually to open an office." "Not bad." Angela's heart pounded, but she steadied herself. "What are you doing here?" Bradley strolled in, uninvited, ignoring her coldness. He glanced around, lips curling. "Not bad. But I suppose luck helped, right? I heard you've got yourself a wealthy boyfriend. Christopher Hayes, isn't it?" Angela's hands clenched. "That has nothing to do with you. Get out." Bradley didn't budge. His voice hardened. "I'm the father of Sofia and Elena. You can't just let some other man replace me." Angela shivered. 6 years of silence. Not a dollar, not a word. And now he dared speak of fatherhood. Bradley sat down, pulling papers from his briefcase. "I've spoken to a lawyer. I can demand visitation, even custody. Courts value blood ties, Angela. You know that." Her face burned. "You have no right. You abandoned them at birth. I have hospital records and witnesses. Do you think a court would believe a man like you?" Bradley shrugged, smiling cruelly. "Maybe, maybe not. But I know one thing. Christopher Hayes doesn't want his name dragged into a messy custody battle. You'd better negotiate with me if you don't want your shiny new life to fall apart." Angela stepped back, hands trembling. This was the ghost she had always feared. When Bradley finally left, reeking of alcohol, Angela collapsed into her chair. Old terror rose to drown her, but she wasn't alone this time. She grabbed her phone and dialed. Christopher's voice came instantly, taut with concern. "Angela? What's wrong?" Choking, she told him everything. Silence lingered for a few seconds, then his voice was firm, unshakable. "He won't touch you or the girls. I'm coming. Don't face this alone." Angela clutched the phone, tears streaming. 6 years ago, she had been abandoned in the delivery room, with no one to shield her. Now, someone said, Don't be afraid. I'm here." When Christopher arrived at the office, Angela rushed into his arms. He gripped her shoulders, voice steady. "I promise, Angela, he won't destroy our family. Not ever." Angela buried her face against him, crying like a child for the first time in years. That evening, Christopher moved Angela and the girls into his downtown apartment. Not to flaunt wealth, but to ensure safety. Security staff, coded elevators, surveillance cameras gave Angela a fragile sense of relief. Sofia and Elena ran wide-eyed through the apartment. Elena pressed her face to the glass wall. "Mommy, I can see the Space Needle." Sofia settled quietly onto the sofa, flipping through an art book, calm but shining with wonder. Angela stood still, torn. She couldn't let Bradley ruin this fragile piece. Yet deep down, fear gnawed. Would the court side with biology over the years of sacrifice? In his study, Christopher called his trusted lawyer, holding Angela's hand across the desk. "He'll try to use the law as a weapon. But Angela, we have the truth. 6 years, no support, no contact. That's abandonment." Her voice shook. "I'm scared that no matter how hard I've fought, the court will see blood as more important." Christopher met her gaze. "If the law needs proof of who a real father is, I'll prove it with every day I've spent with them. I'm not afraid of Bradley, but I know you are, so I'll stand in front." Tears welled again. For the first time, she felt someone share the weight of her fear. The next day, Bradley's lawyer sent a formal notice. Visitation rights demanded hint at custody battles. Angela stared at the papers, hands icy. She remembered Sofia's quiet question, "Mommy, why don't we have a dad?" She had answered with tenderness, but now that the so-called father wanted to return, not out of love, but envy and greed. Christopher placed the papers down, voice firm. "This isn't just a legal fight. This is our chance to expose him. Angela, we won't let him twist the truth." That night, Angela couldn't sleep. She sat by her daughter's beds, watching them breathe softly. Elena clutched the colored pencils Christopher had given her. Sofia slept with her sketchbook beside her pillow. Angela whispered, "My darlings, I promise to protect you. Even if I must face the past, I won't let it swallow us, because now we're not alone anymore." Moonlight spilled across their peaceful faces. Angela clenched her fist, a new strength rising within. Bradley would not win. Not this time. Never again. For 3 weeks, Angela's life felt like a grueling battle meetings with lawyers, stacks of legal documents, sleepless nights haunted by fears of Sofia and Elena's future. But through the storm, Christopher stood firm. He wasn't just a companion, he was a shield, steady and unwavering, holding their fragile family against the tide. One Saturday morning, Christopher suggested something unexpected. "I want to take you and the girls out of the city. Just for a day. No paperwork, no court. Just us as a family." Angela hesitated but nodded when she saw the spark in Sofia and Elena's eyes. "All right, but not too far. I have work on Monday." "I promise," Christopher said with a smile. They drove 2 hours to Lake Serene, its clear waters ringed by towering evergreens. The wooden cabin on the shore was a place Christopher had visited as a boy with his uncle Marcus. As soon as they exited the car, Elena squealed, "Mommy, look, the lake is huge." She ran to the water's edge, leaving tiny footprints in the damp sand. Sofia stood quietly, wide-eyed, soaking in the vast beauty around her. Angela drew a deep breath of crisp air. After weeks of tension, the place felt like a hidden sanctuary. That afternoon, they rowed out onto the lake. The surface shimmered like glass beneath the pale sky. Christopher sat at the bow with Elena on his lap, laughing each time the spray splashed her face. Sofia perched beside Angela, sketchbook in hand, capturing the mountains in quick strokes. "She's like her mother," Christopher said softly, watching Sofia. "She sees the world not just with her eyes, but with her heart." Angela smiled, her chest swelling with quiet joy. She had no idea Christopher had planned something more. When the sun set, they spread a picnic blanket on the grass. After Sofia and Elena drifted off to sleep under the fading light, Christopher reached for Angela's hand. "Angela, I've wanted to say this for a long time." His voice was warm, but it trembled slightly. Her heart raced. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. A diamond ring glimmered in the starlight. "Angela Morales," he said, each word deliberate. "You and your daughters have given me what I thought I'd lost forever, a family. I can't promise life will always be calm, but I'll be here to protect and love you. Will you marry me and build this future with me?" Angela froze, tears rising. Bradley's shadow flickered in her mind for a fleeting second, but then it vanished, erased by the man before her. Steadfast, kind, devoted. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will." Christopher slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her close. He didn't cheer or boast. He pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, "Thank you." A simple gratitude, but it struck deep. This wasn't just joy, it was responsibility, chosen freely. Suddenly, Elena stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. "What's happening?" "I saw a shiny box." Angela laughed through her tears. Christopher ruffled her hair, then turned to both girls. "Would you like me to be your dad?" "Officially." Sofia's eyes widened. She stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded firmly. Elena shouted, "Yes, I've wanted you to be my dad forever." Angela hugged them both, her heart overflowing. For the first time, her world felt whole. The next day, back in Seattle, Angela and Christopher began planning their wedding and standing against Bradley. In the living room, Christopher spread legal documents across the table. "He won't stop, Angela. We need to move first. Announcing our engagement isn't just personal. It's a public statement that this family is unbreakable. I want everyone to know Sofia and Elena already have a real father." Angela hesitated. "I'm afraid too much attention will hurt the girls. I don't want them reading negative things about their family." Christopher nodded. "We'll be careful. A small ceremony, but with the right people, respected voices in the city. The lawyer says if we can prove stability and recognition, Bradley won't have ground to stand on." Angela looked at the ring on her hand, determination welling inside. "I've been running from the past for too long. I won't run anymore. If we face him, we'll face him together." Christopher squeezed her hand. His eyes burned with conviction. "We won't just face him, Angela. We'll win." Angela sat before the mirror after tucking the girls into bed that night. She lifted her hand, watching the diamond sparkle. But more than the ring, the woman in the reflection struck her. No longer the abandoned girl in a delivery room. No longer the humiliated server hiding at gala banquets. Now she was Angela Morales' mother, fiancée, a woman stepping boldly into the light to protect the family she had built. The Grand Harborview Hotel in Seattle glowed with evening lights. Inside the grand ballroom where Angela and Christopher had first met 2 years earlier, crystal chandeliers glittered over gowns and tuxedos, the clink of glasses mingling with polite laughter at the annual charity gala. Angela walked in beside Christopher, her hand firmly in his. She wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her figure, her face radiant, her eyes alive with confidence. No one could have guessed that she was once the timid woman serving drinks here, tray trembling in her hands. Christopher, tall and composed beside her, looked at her with quiet pride. Sofia and Elena weren't present. They were home with Mrs. Thompson, but Angela carried them with her every step. It was their love that had brought her here. Then, amid the polished crowd, Bradley appeared. His rented tuxedo was wrinkled, his smile forced, his eyes still carrying that old, poisonous arrogance. He strode directly to their table, his voice loud enough for the nearest circle of guests to hear. "Angela, you look stunning, but shouldn't you introduce me? I'm the father of Sofia and Elena." Murmurs rippled through the room. Judges, city officials, and lawyers turned their heads with sudden curiosity. Angela drew a deep breath and rose to her feet. "Mr. Carter," she said clearly, her voice steady, "you have no right to claim that title. For 6 years, you did not give a single dollar, not one birthday card, or a single word of concern. A father? That's just an empty word to you." Bradley sneered, trying to regain ground. "Don't forget, Angela, blood is blood. The court won't ignore that." Christopher stood, his voice low but resonant. "You're wrong. Fatherhood isn't in blood, it's in reading bedtime stories, steadying a bike, and wiping tears after a fall. You abandoned that right long ago. And I, Christopher Hayes, chose to be their father. Sofia and Elena have chosen me, too. The air grew heavy. Angela reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. She gave a signal to Christopher's lawyer. Moments later, the ballroom's massive screen flickered to life. Bradley's voice filled the room, distorted but unmistakable. If you don't want me to take this to court, you'd better share some of Hayes's money with me. Call it fair. The room fell silent, then erupted in whispers. Judges frowned. City officials exchanged grim looks. Bradley's face drained of color. He stammered, That's not me." Angela stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I've lived in fear long enough. Tonight, I am not afraid. Everyone here just heard the truth. You don't want your daughters. You only want money." Bradley spun, searching for escape, but hotel security moved in, blocking the exits. Christopher's lawyer stepped forward, voice firm. "The recording has already been submitted to the prosecutor. This isn't just a civil matter. This is extortion." Applause broke out, scattered at first, then swelling. Angela stood tall, her eyes bright, no longer the abandoned mother on a hospital bed. She stood in the light, defending her family with her own voice. Judge Patricia Williams, known for her stern rulings in family court, rose from her table. Her voice was icy. "Mr. Carter, I've seen hundreds of unfit parents try to exploit their children. Rarely have I seen someone so brazen abandoning them, returning not to nurture, but to extort." Bradley sputtered, I want to see my kids." Angela's voice rang out, sharp as glass. "If you truly wanted that, you would have been there from the beginning. But no, you chose alcohol and women over the cries of newborns. Please don't lie to me, and don't lie to Sofia and Elena." Christopher took Angela's hand, his words steady. "This family doesn't need a father by title. They need a father at heart, and they already have one." Christopher's lawyer handed over a thick file, records of 6 years without support, testimony from Nurse Helen Parker about the day of birth, copies of the divorce Bradley himself had filed. Each page slammed the door tighter. The prosecutor nodded. "This is sufficient for charges of extortion. And as for custody, the file speaks for itself." He abandoned all responsibility. Bradley staggered, pale, eyes darting desperately. But the crowd's gaze was merciless now. Security stepped in, hands firm on his shoulders. He tried to resist, but his struggles were pitiful. Under the light's glare and the disgust murmur, Bradley was led out, defeated, exposed. The ballroom erupted in applause when the doors closed behind him, not for drama but justice. Christopher pressed a kiss to Angela's forehead. "You did it. You're no longer the woman he tried to break. You're Angela Morales, strong, brave, and free." Tears streamed down Angela's cheeks, but they were tears of release. She squeezed Christopher's hand. "Thank you for believing I was strong enough to stand." The gala carried on, but the mood had shifted. Angela was no longer an outsider in this world of glitter. She was at its center now. Guests came to shake her hand, congratulate her, and even propose collaborations for her design firm. Later, when Christopher took the stage, he didn't boast wealth or achievements. His words were simple. "Tonight, we're not just talking about charity. We're talking about families who suffer but endure, mothers who never give up, and children who deserve love. I found my family most unexpectedly, and I will protect them with everything I have." The ovation thundered through the hall. Sofia and Elena rushed to the door when they returned home that night. "Mommy, how was it? Daddy, did you talk about us?" Christopher lifted them both into his arms, smiling. "I did. And now the whole city knows how much I love you." Angela stood watching, her heart full. The ghost of the past was gone. Ahead lay only one path, their path lit by love, resilience, and the sweet certainty of justice.